Hello and welcome along to episode 305 of the Total Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. A huge thank you to our TSP Patreon community because we couldn't make this show each week without your loyal support. And a big welcome to Gary Fox and Oliver Ralph, who have joined our Bobby Stokes tier this week. Now, we're live streaming this episode as ever to Facebook, X, Twitch, Instagram, and YouTube. More on that to come later. And coming up this week on the podcast, 2 defeats on the road. No surprise there, but there are some positives to take from the trips to Nottingham Forest and Manchester United. We will reflect on both of those games. And we're back at home this weekend, Newcastle making the long trip south. So we will preview that game for you. My name is Martin Starke. Joining me this week are Steve Grant, Alfie House, and Glen de la Cour. And there's plenty to talk about. So let's get into it. We'll start with the Forest game, if that's all right. It was a case of mistakes costing us yet again at the City Ground, but we almost snatched a point. Plenty to talk about. Alfie, 2 very different halves of football. I mean, you were there when Tall Paul scored, so I'm sure we'll get onto that eventually. But that first half was pretty dreadful.
Yeah, I think in terms of first halves, it's potentially one of the worst I've ever seen from any team. I don't think I'm being too harsh in saying that. And I was a little bit harsh on social media when the third goal went in. And I said, just relegate this team now because I couldn't be bothered for another 16 or whatever it is games of it. The first 2 goals, just ball watching, just utterly useless. And, I just felt that, it was only going to get worse. I didn't see a way back in. But I'll hold my hands up that the second half was much better, particularly the last sort of 30 minutes. You mentioned the Paul goal, but that only came, the start of 12 minutes of added time. I think they'd already made a decent impression on the game by that point. Obviously Jan Bednarek very lucky to be credited with the goal, but it come from a substitute. And I think the thing for Saints and Ivan Juric yesterday was that he felt we had to make 3 changes to the team. One was through Tyler Dibling, who's going to be out for sort of 6 weeks, but Kamaldeen Sulemana and Leslie Ugochukwu basically just deemed not quite fit enough to go again after Thursday. And by the way, Nottingham Forest played on Tuesday. They had 48 hours additional preparation time, additional recovery time than Saints, which is an absolute joke in terms of scheduling. But the 3 players that Ivan brought in, I mean, unfortunately, they were dreadful, weren't they, really? I mean, Cameron Archer and Adam Armstrong up front just didn't make any sort of impression on the game at all. And Flynn Downs had a really bad day. And I know he's just back from injury, but the people who are asking questions about whether he can step up to the Premier League have got even more questions. And, I think we'll get onto it, but he's very lucky to have not been sent off for a blatant red, in my opinion, an elbow, a shoulder to the face, whatever it was. And it could have got worse. But yeah, they the lads who came on, Kamaldeen Sulemana, Leslie Ugochukwu and Big Paul, they turned the game around a little bit. And, I was only a little bit disappointed with sort of the last 5 minutes of added time where I feel like nothing really happened. There was maybe one free kick that Anthony Taylor should have given Will Smallbone, but other than that, he didn't have too much. But yeah, I was really impressed with the comeback and the effort, I suppose, and what they showed. But it just wasn't enough because that first half was so bad. And obviously, Aaron Ramsdale had his blushes spared as well.
He was lucky, wasn't he?
A real dreadful clanger. I'm sure we'll get into detail, but I mean, he had that spared by a dodgy VAR call as well. So yeah, interesting game. Lots to be positive about again, but just so much in that first half not to like.
You were there as well, Steve, I think, weren't you? I saw someone say yesterday after that first half, I mean, Alfie saying, call the season off, relegate us now. Somebody else was saying that teams won't celebrate when they score against us soon because it's far too easy. And we made it far too easy in that first half.
Yes, the celebration's a little bit like when you play that sort of first pre-season game against your local non-league side. It was weird because sort of speaking to a couple of friends of mine, I got one friend of mine who lives in Dubai who's a Forest fan who's probably watching this evening actually, and he was saying that he thought we played pretty well for most of the game. But I mean, one thing that Glen said to us on our sort of group chat yesterday was, and there was a good quote of sort of got the old Gordon Strachan quote of propaganda football, in that we played a lot of neat and tidy passes, but in completely unthreatening areas. We never really looked like we were getting anywhere with it. We had a couple of little moments where Sugawara got into a good crossing position down the right, forced a couple of corners where we've at least created some mild peril in their penalty area. But other than that, there was just nothing there, and the 3 goals that they scored were just so easy. I mean, Forest had done nothing up until the first goal. They'd barely kind of raised an arm in sort of acknowledgement that the game was even going on, and then suddenly a little flick round the corner, and Anderson's got the wrong side of Aribo, and he's just got a free run. I mean, there is this thing that pros at all levels seem to be. It seems to be something that's kind of ingrained, and it therefore must be taught. That basically you don't go to engage a sort of on-rushing attacker until you're right at the edge of the penalty area. But for us, yesterday, that was too late because Anderson's hit it from 20, 25 yards. It's a great finish from where he is. For a guy that doesn't score. That's his first goal for Forest. And yeah, I mean, it's frustrating that, I mean, you look at the, I think the XG for the 3 goals collectively was about 0.4. So it kind of shows you the ridiculous level of their finishing. But when the second goal goes in, and that's kind of a goal that we'd have given away under Russell Martin, playing a silly pass that was completely unnecessary, and it's bounced off someone's shin and fallen straight to the opposition. I mean, I kind of think, I mean, Bednarek's going to be credited with the sort of statistical error leading to a goal. But for me, that was Bree's fault entirely, because there was a simple pass to play out wide to Sugawara, who was completely free. But unfortunately, the level that Bree is at, he is only ever very sort of focused in sort of where he can actually see. There's no concept that any football is possible to take place outside of his kind of field of vision. So he's played the way he's facing, which that's very Sunday league, isn't it? But unfortunately, Bednarek wasn't even looking when the pass was made, because he was trying to sort of bellow out instructions to somebody else. So yeah, that then happens, and then the third goal where, I mean, we know that Forest's main game plan is to get the ball wide and put crosses into Chris Wood. So yeah, fine example of defending to leave the guy completely unmarked, about 12, 13 yards from goal, in the middle. So yeah, I mean, the first half was about as disastrous as it could have possibly been. Frankly, I was amazed that there weren't more people that just decided, no, I'm done for this now. Time to head back to the pub. But yeah, second half was obviously a marked improvement. But thing is, you can't. I mean, at any level, it doesn't matter what level you're playing at. You can't give the opposition a 3-goal start and expect to have any chance of coming back into it. I mean, the fact that we did is down. I think ultimately more to Forest taking their foot off the gas. I mean, yeah, we've obviously improved massively, but that was, I mean, very difficult not to. But Forest were coasting, and I think we lulled them into a false sense of security. But yeah, I mean, ultimately you left it a little bit too late. I think that Aribo, the Bednarek chance that was cleared off the line in injury time, I think Aribo was probably offside there.
Right.
So I'm, to be honest, I'm quite glad that actually we were spared the sort of desolation of celebrating an equaliser coming from 3-0 down, only for it to then be chalked off by VAR. So yeah, small mercies and all that, but yeah, it just frustrating, because once again, and I mean, we'll come on to Old Trafford in a bit, but that's 2 games away from home where actually we weren't really expecting to get anything at all, and yet we've come up against opposition who were there. To be honest, were there for the taking. So yeah, really, really frustrating.
Glenn, have you got dressed up for the occasion, or have you just finished work? It's nice to see you with a shirt on.
No, it's a cricket shirt, mate. It's a cricket shirt because I feel that I'm playing indoor cricket later, but I feel like if I wear a cricket shirt, it will soon be the cricket season, and this football season will be over. That's kind of the logic. I thought, should I get a change for this? No, I can't be bothered.
Have you got one that we can all borrow?
Yeah, it's probably big enough for you all to borrow it. But yeah, no. So I'll tell you what, I'll wear the if we beat Newcastle next week, I'll wear the batting helmet as well next week.
I'm here for that.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Your take
Alex,
on the
get
game
that clipped
yesterday? Forest 3-0 up at half time. I mean, you must have been fearing the worst as well, really.
The lads have covered it. The first half was as bad as you could possibly be, really. We're dreadful in both penalty areas. Or we certainly were in the first half, absolutely dreadful in both penalty areas. And we were dreadful in midfield when it came to tracking back and doing the ugly things, the sticking with runners and putting effort in. I just noticed the difference between the speed of the Forest players and the intensity, how much they wanted to sprint to cover the ground and how much we didn't. So the first half was as bad as you could get. And like Steve, I'm surprised there weren't a massive exodus of people at halftime, because that was absolutely pathetic. And one thing we've learned about the Premier League, and we knew it anyway, it shouldn't be a surprise, is that you can't play for 45 minutes, 60 minutes, 75 minutes like we did at Old Trafford. You can't play for portions of games and expect to win when you're a team down near the bottom. You can't sort of have a bad 25, 30 minutes, whatever, because you the way we are, we just ship goals at an alarming rate. We're just not good enough to keep them out. So the first half was as bad as it comes, and the second half, I largely agree with Steve. Forest were trying to coast. I mean, at 3-1, they took off two of their best players, Ilanga and Gibbs White, and thought they'd coast. Thought they'd coast through to the end, and Tall Paul made it interesting. So it was quite amusing. Nuno didn't look terribly happy at that point on the bench when it went to 3-2. But I never really felt we were gonna get back into it. It was fun, wasn't it? For sort of like 10-15 at the end. But no, we saved face in the second half basically, which was good. It's good that we didn't go under and get beat 6 or 7. But again, it's another reminder of kind of what could be if we have the right players on the pitch and we play properly. I mean, you mentioned the forwards, Armstrong and Archer. I wouldn't care if I didn't see either of them all season. For the rest of the season, garbage, absolute garbage. A pair of them. They both got things they're good at. Archer's a good finisher. We've seen that. Armstrong's a willing runner, but honestly, they've got so many things, the pair of them, in their game that just stops them being capable of playing in the Premier League. Usually the ball just bounces off them. They just give the ball away too easily. They don't make intelligent runs. I mean, there was one in the first half at 1-0 where Armstrong tried to control a ball in the 6-yard box instead of hitting it first time, and the ball actually went behind him. It's just like, what is that? What is that? I can't imagine any other forward in the Premier League, with the possible exception of Anthony at Man United, having as bad a touch as that. It was just awful. It's just like Flynn Downs massively struggled not to get sent off. I mean,
is he missing Russell Martin? Is that what that is? I know he's coming back from injury, but he's just not really performing, is he? And I know the manager was quite honest about it yesterday after the game.
Well, I think he's struggled a little bit anyway this season, as we all know. And I just think he's the sort of player that needs to be fully fit to have any sort of like real chance of playing well at this level. And I don't think he is fit. He looked a bit fitter against Forest than he did against Manchester United, because him coming onto the pitch, I mean, bearing in mind he was replacing Aribo, who's not the strongest runner at the end of the game. Him coming on against Manchester United was one of the catalysts for it all sort of like going a bit pear-shaped. There were others, and we'll get onto those. But yeah, I just think he's struggling. It looked like he was trying to get himself sent off at the end of the first half. And as you said, the forearm smash on Gibbs White, how that's not reviewed and upgraded, I have no idea. But I mean, I will say about the one Forest had disallowed, I do think people do try and do mental gymnastics to try and find a way to give the different decisions sometimes. At the end of the day, I thought Wood was offside. He threw himself at the ball. Yes, he didn't touch it, but to me, he's offside. He's trying to get involved. That should be offside. And I was, I know there's been a certain amount of outrage, certainly amongst Forest fans and Nuno about that being disallowed, but I have no real issue with that because he went to get involved. He chucked himself into the mixer. So so there you go. But anyway, that goal getting disallowed made it interesting at the end. But ultimately, we got what we deserved, which was nothing because of that first half performance, which is another one to add to the Tottenham first half, Brentford second half. There's shocking periods of football that we've had this season.
Yeah, we've had a few. Alfie, we got to find out a bit more about Tyler Dibling's injury as well. I mean, it was just at a point where he was maybe finding a different role in the team, and you think, well, actually, this might be a bit of a purple patch for him. It looks like he's going to be out for a few weeks, which is the news that none of us really wanted to hear.
Yeah, I think at the moment they're sort of hoping for 4 weeks, and maybe 6 at worst. So it's, I mean, when you look at the schedule, that basically takes us up to March, which is basically the end of the season. Yeah, they're going to miss him, obviously. I think that Ivan had sort of been quite honest about Tyler in terms of what he thinks he can do, and he's probably going to play up front. And him coming out directly meant that Adam Armstrong came in. So obviously there is a net negative there, unfortunately. Yeah, it's a blow, but there's not much I can do about it. I suppose the only thing you could say is that at least he probably won't move anywhere this month, but I don't think that was likely anyway, to be honest with you. I think he probably would have stayed the whole season regardless. So, yeah, an ankle injury for him. Hopefully he recovers well and he's okay, but a bit of a blow. But I suppose just on Glen's point, I mean, to talk about the Premier League again, and the first half was dreadful, as I've already said, but I suppose the one thing you could say is it's quite funny how they give up basically 2 chances from 20 yards, and both of them go straight into the bottom corner, and you think that's the quality. So it's a difference in quality, and you get punished relentlessly. And when it rains, it pours. I couldn't actually believe that they scored both of them. Really, maybe a little bit unlucky.
It was the lack of pressure. That was the thing. They've got all the time in the world to line it up, whereas ordinarily you'd have players throwing themselves at it to try and block it, and those ones rarely go in.
And that was why it was so poor. You look at the stats and say, we've only had 2 chances, but that's why it's so poor, because everybody could see there was absolutely no sort of intensity, no energy. The third goal that I didn't reference is where they play it across the entire pitch, probably twice, and nobody even moves towards the ball. Carl Peters just stands there, the cross comes in.
Yeah.
And bloody hell. Yeah, really, really poor.
But, the whole point of playing 3 at the back is the wing backs are out to put, one of the benefits is the wing backs are wider. So they're supposed to be able to more easily put pressure on the guy who's about to cross the ball. But I mean, Walker Peters does a lot of good things, but that was garbage. Just allow that cross. But then you got 3 centre halves in the middle. No one's marking the 6'3" centre forward who scored 20 goals this season. That's ridiculous as well. So it was just shocking on that third goal. Yeah,
I think you can see why Forest's defense is so good though, because like they play with this back 4, but it's really compact and really narrow. Like you have all 4 of their defenders inside the box, and the people who get out to the wingers and stop the crosses, it's actually their Alanga and Hudson-Odoi who actually work really hard. I didn't quite realise. So they've almost got these 2 banks of 4, like one inside the box, one on the edge of the box, and then you've got the Morgan Gibbs-White and Chris Wood, and obviously they break quickly as well. And I mean, if there was a game for Adam Armstrong and Cameron Archer in the Premier League, it was definitely not that one. Like that was so far from their game. There's no space to run, like say, no space to touch the ball, and they need time to touch it. He just thought, so I think Ivan got that one wrong. I appreciate that his hand was forced in regards to injuries and fitness, but it's made it so clear for me that going forward, if they're available, Camaldine unbelievably has to play. I mean, I can't believe we're saying that, but another great week for Camaldine.
Like a week and a half on from
but has to play, and Paul Onuachu probably has to play as well, to be honest, just because he offers something different. He's not amazing, and I think I conceded ground to you last week, Steve, about the fact that he's not very good, but I've seen more evidence, and now I need to see it more. So you know what I mean? So
he actually found the corner this time, so that's
well. Let's talk about that goal, Steve, because you were there, and forevermore the 19th of January will now be known as Paul Onuachu Day. I think Moonpig are doing some cards. I'm pretty sure we're going to have t-shirts and mugs and probably posters in the store. They're probably working on that right now. But it's taken a couple of years, but we finally worked out if you get a good cross in and he's at the near post and he gets a good head on it, then we can actually make the most of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to make a stark admission here.
Oh, no, had you left?
I had already gone. Yeah, so because I was up in York on Saturday and got the train down, so I was carrying a bag with loads of stuff in, so I didn't want to try and get that in the ground, so I left that in a mate's car, and he wanted to leave with about 10 to go, because it's like, well, game's done, we're not getting anything out of this, let's just go, and then I can get back get back out on the road quicker, miss the traffic. We got about halfway back to the car, and obviously the Onuachu goal had gone in, so we got the notifications. It's like, oh god, here we go. So yeah, unfortunately I missed it, but yeah, having seen it back on the replay, it was interesting that the one that was then subsequently cleared off the line from Bednarek was a near identical cross. So yeah, Fernandez seems to have finally got that knack of exactly where he needs to be aiming it at, the power and the whip that he needs to put on it. And yeah, I mean that's good. That's interesting going forwards, because I mean obviously everybody who was watching on Thursday night will have heard and probably seen the graphic of the number of goals that we'd scored from corners all season, which literally as we took the corner in the 42nd minute said 0, and then within 3 seconds the ball was in the back of the net. So yeah, to have scored twice from corners in the space of 4 days is, I mean, that's progress of a sort. And obviously Onuachu finally getting off the mark. Maybe he goes on a little bit of a run. I don't know whether he might be one of those sort of streaky players that.
Well, he did score a couple of back-to-back hat tricks when he was at Genk in the Belgian league. They usually.
Here we go then.
So at least one.
Buckle up, everyone.
Watch your back, Dan Burn.
I mean, it's an interesting point though, Glenn, isn't it? Because I mean, he's played 5, he's lost 5, and I just, is that win going to come? I mean, to me, it sounds like he knows which players he wants, he knows which ones need to go. It feels like we're making a bit of progress. Finally, it's crazy to sit here in nearly the end of January and say that, but it feels like we're close to getting something, and it's been a while since we've been able to say that.
Well, we're not. I don't think we're close to getting anything, because we still drop in these stinking periods of every game at the moment where we just, as I said earlier, we just can't afford to do that. Yes, I think he's making headway. There are still some strange things that he's doing. I mean, like the choice of strikers yesterday, and we're going to get onto it. The ridiculous substitutions against Manchester United, which were just dreadful. And after this period of time, you can't really blame it on not knowing your players, I don't think, anymore.
Yesterday was about the turnaround of the game, right? Then the recovery time.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but some of the, I mean, we'll talk about the unit, but I mean, bringing Will Smallbone on for whoever when Dibling went off against Man United, that was just bizarre. And the double substitution at the end was bizarre as well. So there are some things he's doing right. I think he's weeding out what he wants. Certainly as his starting 11, and it will include Camaldine. It will include Paul Onuachu, I think. It looks like it's going to include James Bree, even though I think 99% of people wouldn't agree with that. And I think he's going to work out pretty quickly that he's probably only got, I mean, he said he had 17 players he can trust. There's less than that. But, there's about 11 or 12. And once you go beyond that, then the team gets weaker. And then we struggle to win any games. But no, I think he's making progress of sorts. But, you've got to remember, we're going down. There's no.
It's not up for debate, is it?
State the bleeding obvious. We're going down, but we just want to get to the stage where we're being competitive in every game. And you could argue, we played well against Manchester United for 75 minutes. We were competitive against Forest for the last 45, but the game was gone. We need to be competitive from the start of games, and this season is just going to be about winning a couple of games and having something to remember the season by. That for me was why the capitulation at Old Trafford was so disappointing, because a win at Old Trafford, even though they are crap, would be a reminder of this season. Oh yeah, that was a good day anyway. I mean, at the moment we've got Tor Paul's goal will probably be the highlight of the season.
Goal of the season.
But I mean, Jurek needs to win some games. At the end of the day, he needs to win some games. It's all very well making slow progress. He needs to win a few. I mean, we shouldn't be as far behind as we are. Teams like Ipswich and Leicester, I mean, Leicester are really, they're terrible at the moment, aren't they? But we're still a sizable number of points behind them, and we got to at least close the gap a little bit for Urich's sort of stock to rise. So yeah, it's up to him really to get a tune out of the players that he's got. 'Cause it doesn't look like we're going to do much in the transfer window.
Well, on that, Glenn, we should say that whilst we've been speaking, Maxwell Cornet has officially gone back to West Ham, so there is a loan spot.
No,
he wasn't playing anyway.
No, but there is a loan spot available in the Premier League. So could they do something with that? Possibly.
Do you need to disappear and do breaking news for that?
No, it's fine. Everyone knows Maxwell Cornet's gone. I don't think anyone remembers he played for Saints, to be honest, so don't worry about it.
No.
Get a yellow tie on.
I'll strike that off the list. I'll strike that off the list for later. Anything else on Forest before we move on? Because we're going to talk about the United game, obviously preview Newcastle as well. Anything we missed out?
No, I don't think so.
One to forget, wasn't it, really?
Well, Ryan Fraser's back in the squad. Maybe more.
Ryan Fraser over Adam Lallana was an interesting choice, I thought.
Yeah, well, I think Adam Lallana's clearly not in favour with Ivan. I don't know for what reason.
Stamina, presumably. I don't know.
Exactly. It's just he's not exactly heavy metal.
If you're only ever going to be able to get 20 minutes out of him, then kind of you might as well use the bench spot for somebody else, I guess.
Well, when was the last time we got 20 minutes out of him? It's been 5 the last few games. But then I'd still back him to run more in 5 than Will Smallbone does in 20.
He was asked about Ryan Fraser after the game, though, wasn't he? And he said, well, we've got Sulemana and we've got Adam Armstrong that play the same position. So that's why he's not found himself in the squad. And that kind of comes back to what we were saying, like, why did we sign him in the first place? And
different manager, obviously. But, I mean, he Ivan last week said, I've got 18 players who I think are good, basically.
So he's lost one now.
I'd love to know what number he thinks that is now, because it can't be 18. Because a couple of those ones who he thought were good have proven they're not. So
when's the press conference this week? Is it Thursday?
Thursday, yeah.
There's your first question. There was another game as well. Saints conceding a late hat-trick meant a 3-1 victory for Manchester United at Old Trafford. I mean, we played well for 80 minutes, so close to something special, but still a heavy defeat. There were a few bits in there, I think, that impressed some of us. Steve, what impressed you about the first 80 minutes?
Well, the fact that we realised that United were there for the taking and just got on and did it. The only frustrating thing was that we weren't 4-0 up at some point midway through the second half, because that was kind of what the dominance should have turned into. I mean, you look at the sort of half-decent sides who have gone to Old Trafford in recent weeks. Brighton obviously were there yesterday and won 3-1, had another goal ruled out by VAR as well. Bournemouth went there a few weeks back and won 3-0 for the second year running. And this is becoming normalised now, and we've gone there and somehow contrived to lose a game 3-1, having basically only given up kind of 4 chances, really. I mean, Anthony's miss was quite something, but I mean that kind of sums that guy up completely, doesn't it?
Does Danny Baker still do a DVD at Christmas? That'll be on there for sure, wouldn't it?
No, I think Danny Baker spends most of his time just, typical old man yells at clouds scenario these days on social media, which is a bit disappointing, but.
It would have made the DVD though. That was terrible.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean that was extraordinary. But yeah, we did so much right for the first. I mean, let's be honest. It was 65 minutes when the second and third subs were made. I think that was the point at which the tide properly turned, because we were fine for the first 10 minutes after Dibling's injury. When Smallbone came in, he was involved in a couple of nice little neat 1-2s that got us into some good space in midfield. But the problem was then when we then made the next set of subs, we basically sacrificed any talent really, in terms of sort of attack mindedness. Anyway, I mean, it looked for all money, and certainly the commentators were saying that the word they got was that it was going to be Sulemana that was going to be taken off as part of that double sub. And it seems as if Juric changed his mind on the strength of Sulemana having another run at Yoro, the United centre back, who he absolutely terrorised all night. And as a result, he then took I think he took Fernandez and Aribo off, I think. So basically the two sort of central midfielders who were kind of on the ball. It was Onuachu came off. And all of a sudden...
He was later. It was Aribo.
Oh, he was the later one, was he? But all of a sudden they had so much space in the midfield because the players that we brought on were Armstrong and... I can't remember who else. I'm forgetting now. Downs, that was it. And suddenly United had loads of space to run through the middle. And they weren't really doing that in the first hour or so. But suddenly, with the changes, those players just never got up to speed. That then gave them 25 minutes, half an hour of constant running at us. We weathered the storm for the most part. And then they get a really lucky ricochet with Ahmad's first shot that was blocked by Walker-Peters, just conveniently falls off of his shin right into his path for him to equalise. And I think realistically from there, I think we all saw what was likely to come. Very, very disappointing after showing so much promise. Which is probably going to be the kind of gravestone heading for this season, isn't it? From so many games.
It seemed to me, Glenn, that everyone kind of knew what their job was and they just kind of like got about it for a change. And that was pleasing to see. And I was really surprised, actually, at some of the football and some of the chances.
Yeah, Steve said we should have been. I reckon 3-0 up. We had the double miss from. It's good saves by Onana, Dibling, and then Fernandez blasted it straight at him. So that should have been a goal. And Sulemana absolutely terrorising that guy. That should have led to at least one goal. I think it's hilarious. It's always hilarious when Man United are terrible, and how their new manager left Yoro on his own against Sulemana when. Even after half time, when he'd been beaten about 6 times already, how he left him there without giving him any help is just unbelievable. But we should have scored up. We should have scored more. Obviously, we get the goal in the end. I like the fact that Dibling got above Martinez, who's one of the least likable players in the Premier League. The butcher. He's not very good, basically. Dibling made him look an idiot on another one of the chances as well. I think it was that double chance when he sort of span round him. And we played some really good stuff. Joe Aribo, I thought that was his best game of the season. I thought he was tremendous in the centre midfield. And when we took him off, that was a problem. And that substitution, that annoyed me a little bit because I just thought it was unnecessary. You should have kept him going. I know they probably got stats to say that a player's running less than he was 5 minutes ago, or that sort of thing. But I certainly wouldn't have taken him off. And the issue I have with the first substitution is that we were playing so well, and Dibling gets injured. So make a like for like change. Don't try and be clever, and because it moved Fernandez out of his sort of like number 10 role, and he was having a brilliant game there. So they just sort of like move him as a right-sided attacker and put Smallbone in. And he's just sort of like, why have you made more change than you needed to? I know we could have brought, I know Armstrong's not great, obviously. Could have brought him on as the natural replacement for Dibling, if you like, and just left everything else exactly as it was. Because we're 1-0 up. We're such a fragile team. And the slightest change, or the more changes you make when things are going well, I just feel like it reminded me so much of the Leicester game at the start of the season, where we were 2-0 up and playing well, and then we started making substitutions, and then with every substitution,
that was triggered by an injury as well.
Yeah. So it was just terrible. That was terrible game management in that, and I have to say, I think Jurek got a lot of things wrong in that. In that United second half. And the thing I couldn't believe was that at 1-1, he takes off Bednarek, who's the captain and the leader of the defence, and Onuachu, who's the main midfield player. So that's the spine of the team. And he brings on Nathan Wood and Tall Paul, which drops Will Smallbone back into midfield, where, it was just, and those last sort of 10 minutes were horrible. And the United's second goal was a brilliant ball by Eriksson, but how much space did he have? We're walking around. We're not snapping into tackles at that point. It's just like you give a class player like that time, then they're going to do that.
Like that Odegaard goal a couple of years back, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's just, you've got to be on it, and I think that's what Uric wants, but he's got to learn quickly. There are some players we've got who are just not capable of playing that way. But we did play a lot of good football. I love the Sulemana performance. Can't believe I'm saying that. I like the fact. I love the fact that
it's January, isn't it?
He summed up early on that he was better than Yoro and he could run past him. And quite often, for some reason, players, when they've got that knowledge, they don't do it. But he was like, every time he got the ball, he was like, "You're useless. I'm going to run past you every single time." I just love the way he just kept on doing it. But it's just obviously the final end product wasn't quite there. But it's amazing that we're talking about what we're going to do in the next couple of weeks, and we're pinning on we're saying Sulemana's got to play now. He's our main striker, and he's still scored 0 goals for us in the league. But no,
is it
he was
a bit of January though? Do we think it's a bit like the January transfer window and putting himself out there, Alfie, or is it more to do with sticking to players' strengths, and there's got to be a little bit of actually being asked to do what he's good at rather than having to do things that he's perhaps struggled with?
No, the obvious answer, we don't know, do we? We don't know what's in his brain. We don't know what he's thinking, what's motivating him, or how he feels about it. But from the outside, yeah, you could easily say that because, clearly, I think if the club were to receive a big offer for him relative to what they paid, they would probably accept it. Maybe against Ivan Juric's wishes, just because for what he's offered, for what he's cost, is not very much over the course of 2 years. But equally, he clearly didn't get on with Russellmine, did he? From the start, Russellmine didn't like him, didn't like the way he plays, didn't like how he tries to take people on and then doubles back and tries to take people on again, sort of thing. And I guess he just felt he wasn't really workable, and he's had a tough time with injuries as well. He looks fit at the moment, fitter than he did when Ivan Juric came in and said that he doesn't look fit. And to be fair to Kamaldeen, I mean, Ivan has come out and said, "Look, I've heard he had a bad attitude. He's not fit," and he's still managed to sort of come back and respond to it. So I guess he's not a case of he can't take criticism or he can't take anything like that. But I think just the way he plays obviously suits Ivan Juric. So I think it's probably a combination of all of those things. And yeah, I agree with Glenn. I can't believe that we're saying that, but he is their best option right now. So it's like go on.
Well, he was angry after the game, and he was talking about like player management, and this is something that we've obviously spoken about on the podcast quite a bit. But he was saying, I think, just I haven't got the quote in front of me, but saying we needed to be a bit more Italian and a bit more ugly. Do you think he's going to be teaching some more dark arts and be a bit more Serie A?
Yeah, it's quite a funny quote that. I mean, yeah, I come from Italy where with a masses of mentality, we need to be more evil. He said we need to be more evil. But I mean, that's the same thing that Russell Martin said, wasn't it? That they need to start taking these sort of tactical fouls, running down the clock, being evil. And Jack Stevens sort of tried that a little bit, and it's backfired for him.
We haven't seen him since.
Yeah, he is injured at the moment, to be fair. But yeah, clearly there is a they're soft, I guess, is the harsh way of saying it. Soft in the sense that all the managers who come in and work with them say they need to be less soft and need to be more evil, they need to be more clever, more smart, and also soft in the sense that they've conceded the most goals in the the last 15 minutes of games in the Premier League of any other team this season. Soft in the sense that they've given up games in which they should have put to bed. So yeah, clearly that's a problem for them, and Ivan Juric is not the first person to identify that. And whoever picks them up next, I'm sure will probably feel the same unless they can recruit in the right way. So yeah.
I mean, Steve, just to kind of wrap up the Man United thing, I think Brentford was an absolute shambles, but it feels like it's been marginally better this week.
Yeah, I mean, would have been a struggle to be worse than
it's a low bar.
Brentford. Let's be very honest, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those, isn't it, where even though you've had 2 defeats, you can fish out some positives from. I mean, certainly Old Trafford, there were plenty of positives on show.
Plenty of positives.
And second half yesterday at the City Ground, I mean, if the luck's going for you, we get that equaliser. Just the way it's going, really. But yeah, I mean, there's something to work, still something to work with there, and it's not a complete full-on cause in terms of the various records and stuff that we're kind of running down the clock against. I mean, be fascinating to see what sort of specific things Jurich has planned for Saturday against Newcastle, given the way that they were so ruthlessly taken apart by Bournemouth. I mean, obviously Bournemouth are a much better side than we are, but does show that Newcastle do have a bit of a soft underbelly when you attack the right areas. So yeah, we'll see on that.
I'm going to ask you all about Player of the Week in just a moment. Anything else on Man United before we move on?
No, I mean, I just to say I didn't really sort of talk about the game in any way, and the lads have covered it perfectly. But I do honestly think that after that match at full time, just sort of sat there waiting for the manager to come in, that is maybe the flattest I've felt after a game in such a long time, because they really were brilliant for 75, 80 minutes. And I don't know, obviously you always have in the back of your mind is Saints, so anything could happen, right? But I just felt that this might be their time to do something, and I thought they deserved something. And then, the way that they were just blown away in 10 minutes by a young player scoring a hat-trick is such unusual circumstances. It actually did deflate me. I just felt that, if they can't get anything out of that, then they're a lost cause, aren't they? So, but yeah, I mean, Steve's right. There's so much to be positive about with that first sort of 75 minutes. And I think that was why it hurt even more.
Albeit against the worst Manchester United team in the history of the Premier League.
Which is a really strange media approach from Ruben Amorim, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that someone that wants to get sacked? I don't know. That's weird.
No, I don't believe in that sort of stuff. But clearly he's taken the whole own it, sort of, make the players own it to a whole nother level. Yeah, weird.
Let's do Player of the Week. Probably no surprise that Sulemana won Player of the Week last week for the first time, which is a result. Who stood out for you this week, Steve?
I think the player who's kind of been front and centre both games is Matty Fernandez. I mean, as long as we can keep him fit for the rest of the season, then he's at least someone that's worth turning up to watch. And we might as well make the most of it, because I'm pretty sure he won't be here next season.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Tall Paul just because he waited until you'd left the ground before he scored. Yeah,
he got a signal from someone.
Kudos for that. Any other names, chaps? Any others that we should add onto the list? Because we'll do the poll on socials.
Potentially Leslie Ugochukwu, maybe.
Yeah.
Just thought it was good in both games.
Yeah.
Obviously missed him when he wasn't playing. So
well, the times he was off the pitch,
exactly.
We were pretty shambolic. So yeah.
You agree, Glen?
I'd say Joe. Yeah, I'd agree with that. The Tall Paul. I love goals like that. It's brilliant, and because it's him, and because of the story and the fact that he's an interesting player to score that goal, which is obviously what he's good at. That was it was a good moment. But over the two games, I'm going to say Joe Aribo, because I thought he was really good against United. Yep. Similar sort of thing when he went off was when it started to go wrong. He ended up playing left-sided centre back against Forest when we were chasing the game in the last sort of 10 minutes. So he stayed on for the full 90 against Forest, and I thought he was one of our better players even in that shambolic first half. But so I'd go with Joe Aribo. I think he stepped up the last couple of games.
All right, we'll get that poll on our social media in just a moment. And before we get into the Newcastle preview, what an incredible week it's been for TSP. We've had over 5,000 new subscribers joining us on the channel, and that's just in the last 7 days. We're not really sure what's going on, but, we'll take it. We're here for it. And if you're new, then welcome along. We're really glad to have you with us. TSP has been running since 2017, and the goal's always been to provide a little weekly Saints therapy session. That's often the feedback that we get. And let's be honest, we're all in need of that right now. As I mentioned at the start of the podcast, TSP is entirely fan-supported. It's powered by an incredible community of over 200 Saints fans who keep this podcast going. You supported us for the last 8 years, and we couldn't be any prouder of what we've built here. You can join us for free on Patreon, and you'll get access to our Patreon-only Fantasy Premier League. We do weekly predictions in a league as well, and we've got our WhatsApp community, which has already grown to 50+ Saints fans in just a few weeks. And of course, if you'd like to support us monthly, you'll get an ad-free version of the podcast. We do an ad-free audio and a video version. There's exclusive merch bundles at the end of the season. You get some shout outs in every episode, and you get discounts in the TSP shop as well. Now, you can also become a TSP patron here on YouTube. Just press the join button below, or check out the link in the description to get all the same perks as our Patreon members do. And above all, thank you for joining us and supporting TSP. Even just subscribing and hitting the like button means the world to us, and we really do appreciate your support. So thank you very much. Let's preview the Newcastle game, shall we? After 2 away games, we're back at home this weekend. Newcastle, the visitors. Alfie, they had a hammering at the weekend, but they've been on a nice little run before that. So what can we expect from this one?
Yeah, I mean, I was amazed to see that Bournemouth result, and to be fair to them,
well,
they continue to do unbelievably well. I saw a tweet which I thought was quite funny. Is how long is it going to be before Spurs ruin Areola's career? And I think that, he's definitely heading that way. But for Newcastle, I mean, they kept 4 clean sheets in their last 5 games, I think, before that, and pretty much won all of them. They were a mean defence. They've got goals in Alexander Isak, who was on for a Premier League record. Obviously, remember when Jamie Vardy set the Premier League record for 11 goals in consecutive games against Man United, 10 years ago now, and he had 9, I think, in a row. A couple of them were hat tricks. Anthony Gordon, Jacob Murphy. Is it Jacob or Josh? We can't remember which one it is. The good Murphy brother. They've got so many good players, and to be dismantled like that. I'd think back to the trip to Newcastle, obviously the first game of this season. It just feels like so long ago. It really does. It feels like such a long time ago. But I guess how much have we progressed since then? Probably not much. At least we haven't got to worry about the Ben Brereton Diaz derby at this point. I mean, because they're still annoyed about that. Newcastle fans, they still tweet about that constantly.
It'll be in the comments somewhere, won't it?
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah, and I'm glad that he's not here for that. But I think despite what happened to Newcastle the weekend, it's still a game that we're obviously worried about. I think that Eddie Howe's obviously a good manager, as much as it pains Steve to say, and they're going to be looking for a reaction. They've got so much quality. I guess we'll just have to see how things go on.
I saw a bit of the game, Glenn. I saw some of the highlights. It just felt to me that Bournemouth just never let Newcastle settle. Is that kind of like the way to get about them? Is that what we're going to have to do?
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle are a big physical challenge. The midfield. Joe Linton. He's a funny player. He had a sort of obviously a bad start to his Newcastle career when they thought he was a striker, and then he became a midfield player. And played really, really well. I watch him some games, and I'm thinking, well, he doesn't seem to add that much apart from getting involved in fights. That seems to be sort of like what he does. They've obviously got Tonali back from his gambling suspension, and Bruno Guimaraes in midfield. So that those 3 in midfield, that's a proper midfield. It's got a bit of everything in there. Including physicality, so you really have to stand up to that, which is what Bournemouth did. They didn't take a backward step, even though Bournemouth have got some very sort of like young defenders, Hussein and who's the other one, Sabani. They're only sort of 21, 19, whatever, but they were right in the faces when it all got a bit sort of push and shove when Newcastle started losing. So, I think that's what you have to do. You have to front up to it. So I think players, the central defenders, Bednarek, and in midfield, it'd probably be Leslie Ugachukwu and Joe Aribo. They have to stand up to that and fight for every inch throughout the game. We can't afford to have, people jogging around or standing off. We have got to be right on it all game. Otherwise, they're going to, and they obviously Eddie Howe would be spending this week telling his players that was just a blip. And what a perfect team to be playing after you've just had a blip.
Yeah, right.
So they'll be coming down, trying, wanting to put in a performance to, because I mean, let's face it, the Champions League spots are wide open this year, aren't they? I mean, and Manchester City look like they're going, they're getting back to something approaching decent form now. Arsenal are flaky, Chelsea are flaky. So there's a decent opportunity for Newcastle if they can get back on it and put together another run of wins. So yeah, it's a very tough game. I think they've beaten us pretty much comfortably the last few years. They'll be expecting to beat us again on Saturday, and we just got to hope it's the game where we put together a 90-minute performance instead of a less time than that performance, and then we might have a chance.
It's a good point, isn't it, Steve, that Glen makes? I mean, for them, this is going to be, on paper, a nice little game for them. They'll be looking at this going, yep, we can bounce back.
Yeah, it should do, and they've got a full week to build up to it as well. Obviously, European games this week that they're not involved in, so yeah, full week's preparation. I mean, I think Eddie Howe will have watched the Bournemouth performance and kind of spotted a lot of himself in there. I mean, basically, whenever Bournemouth gave the ball away in either the Newcastle defensive third or in the midfield, within 2 seconds there was a foul. Literally just stop the game dead. Everybody gets themselves back in position, reorganise. And Bournemouth under him were brilliant at that. Newcastle now under him are also brilliant at that. And yeah, Iraola has kind of taken them to a new level now. But yeah, certainly Newcastle will be looking at us and obviously seeing our defensive record, and Isak will be licking his lips and thinking, well, okay, it's just the start of a new run. I mean, he's quality. He's a player that, I mean, basically, if Newcastle don't get top four, he's surely gone, because he should be playing at the very highest level. And they've got a few players in there who if they do fail to make the top 4 or 5, as it's likely to be this year, actually, with the way the coefficients are, then quite a few of them might be heading for the exit, which is kind of not really the way the Saudi dream was sold to people up on Tyneside, was it? It's been a funny old year and a half for them. But I mean, the run they've just been on before Saturday was absolutely extraordinary. Like 9 wins on the bounce, as you say. I think they only conceded like 3 goals in that run, and they've played some good sides in there as well. So yeah, I mean, let's be under no illusions. This is going to be a hell of a hard ask for us on Saturday to get anything from it, given that we've not been able to get points against a lot of the sides around us half the time. So let alone the good ones.
We've got a decent rest though before this one, Alfie, which is nice. So who kind of starts? Is it the team that finished on Sunday, do you think?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly who finished on Sunday, but I mean, I imagine it'll be the
we're not going to see Archer and Armstrong, are we?
No, it'll be the reverse of the 3 changes, I would have thought. Leslie will come in for Flynn, and a couple of strikers will come in, obviously Camaldine and Paul Onuachu, I would imagine. I think obviously people will say, why is James Bree sort of being shoehorned in? I don't think he's being shoehorned in. He can play that position proficiently, but I think he's just proven that, maybe it's too much of an ask at the Premier League for him, so maybe they do something there. But he's not got many options, has he? I mean, every time they bring a sub on, it fails, and that can't just be the manager. It has to be the quality of the players as well. So I think he's going to keep a fairly tight-knit squad in terms of the ones that he's using, the ones that he likes. So there might be a debut, I suppose, if they can get Albert Grumbach over the line. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Obviously, a Danish midfielder, Danish international from Stade Rennes, which I'm not expecting to be done sort of now, but it could be in the next sort of 24 hours from when this goes up, which would mean he'll be available to play. So presumably he's fit and ready, I imagine he'll be in the squad. So that's something to look forward to, I suppose. In a limited list of things to look forward to.
It makes it tricky to do some score predictions, though, doesn't it? But we will try our very best. If you're watching live, stick your score predictions in the comments. Steve, do you want to go first? Score prediction for this one?
Oh God, I think we'll score again. We seem to have suddenly worked out how to take a corner at least, so that bodes well. So
progress.
Yeah, it is. It's only taken us till the end of January. Glory be. I think we'll struggle to get anything out of this. It's going to be another one of those games where you just want to see something, some kind of sign that there's a team cohesion, that certain players are picking up their roles in a relatively new formation for everybody. But ultimately, I think Newcastle should be too strong for us. But Obviously, hope that they're not. Hope they have another off day like they did on Saturday. But I think we'll score, but probably come out the wrong end of a 2-1.
I think that's going to be quite a popular one. Glenn?
I agree with everything Steve said, really. I think I agree. I think we'll get a goal. It'll be interesting to see Sulemana up against Tino Livramento. Tino is obviously a fullback that was better going forward than he was defensively. And I think the same is true of Lewis Hall on the other side. So I guess it'll be Sugawara pushing up that wing. So we might have some joy down the wings. Obviously, we would hope to be a threat at set pieces, especially if the big guy plays. But they got their own big guy, of course. He's a big, horrible, aggressive defender. So it'd be interesting to see how Paul gets on with him, with Dan Burn. So
to be fair, Glenn, Dan's not the only one, is he? I mean, they've got, like, say, Jolinton, who's
Botman.
Botman. Yeah, they've got so many.
Yeah, so if we stand out to them physically, we have to stand out to them physically to have any chance in the game. But I think too many things have got to fall in our favour for us to get a result out of this one. So I will go slightly less optimistic than Steve and go for a 3-1 to Newcastle.
So what we're saying is maybe not this week then. Alfie, any difference?
No, I'll copy Glenn. I will go for a 3-1 for Newcastle as well. That's what I was going to go for. Maybe a bit of an audition for Aaron Ramsdale potentially. Looking ahead to the summer, he'll be hoping to do a bit better than he did on the weekend. But that Newcastle is probably a club. I know that he's obviously been linked, but that's a club where I could definitely see him ending up. West Ham's the other one that I've been sort of guessing. There's no information there, it's just a guess. But I think they're the sort of clubs that we can rely on maybe to give us our money back if we need it. Let's see.
I just want to do a little bit about the January transfer window before we finish. I appreciate, Alfie, we probably covered off most of these as we've gone, but just to kind of summarise where we are, I'm calling this the Deadwood-ometer. Who's still in, who's gone. We know that Ben Brereton Diaz is off to Sheffield United. He was spotted in the director's box at the weekend, which was an interesting way to kind of announce the signing. But that's been confirmed today, hasn't it? He's definitely gone, and that's a loan, is it, to the end of the season?
That's a loan with an option to buy. I don't know if Southampton, I don't think they've confirmed it as a club, but in the Sheffield United club statement, they've said that they've got an option to buy. It's obviously been reported elsewhere, I think by Jack Rosser, about 10 million quid, which
that's
Steve
nuts.
Steve thinks there's no chance of that being paid. I actually think that you underestimate how much Sheffield United like him. And if he goes in there, they win promotion. Don't forget that, Saints paid 18 million quid for Flynn Downs to have him back, because you can make a real impact in a run of promotion and you get a lot of money at the end of it. And he did well for them last season. So, yeah, I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but I could 100% see a period where he goes on, gets a couple of goals in the Championship, and they do give £10 million to Saints, at which point that bit of recruitment, has become sort of been validated and become okay again. So fingers crossed with that. Who else? Maxwell Cornet, as I said during the podcast, Maxwell Cornet has officially gone back to West Ham to go on to Genoa. And we've mentioned Albert Grumbach coming in the other way on loan with an option to buy in the summer as well. Whether that's to do with how well he does or not, I don't know. But yeah, I think loans are going to be really what we're looking at this month. I don't know if they're going to spend any money or receive much money.
We can have... Is there a limit to the number of overseas loans we can have?
No, so I think you can have, I don't know if it's the same in the Championship.
Like 5 in the squad.
Yeah, exactly. I think you can have a certain amount of loans in the squad, but only 2 from Premier League clubs. So you can have as many foreign players as you want. But I think George actually asked Ivan, is he going to go and dip into the Italian market, players he knows, to come and help on loan? And he said, no, they're not good enough, basically.
Wow, that's damning exciting, isn't it?
Fair enough. I mean, it's the Premier League, isn't it?
It must be bad.
The other thing, Glenn, I think last week we just got the news that Henrik Kraft was off, wasn't the news that Henrik Kraft had gone. And then there's the rumours that we're close to appointing a new technical director. Is it Johannes Spors?
Yeah.
We don't know a lot about him, do we? But to me, it's kind of admission that maybe the Jason Wilcox style wasn't for us, was after all, and we need to try something a little bit different. Well,
it's kind of an admission of that. I mean, from the little we know about the new guy coming in, it's more Ralph than Russell. Put it that way. It's how it sounds. It's more about the type of football that even Jurek is trying to play. very direct and up and at 'em, heavy metal football, whatever.
Yeah.
So that seems to be the route we're going down. That's fine. I just think what we've missed out on, be it, since Jason Wilcox left, basically, I think if you're looking at it sympathetically, I think Russell Martin was left high and dry. He was left to make all the decisions on his own. A lot of the incoming transfers, I mean, two of which have been knocked on the head at the earliest possible opportunity. I think if Wilcox had been there, or if someone else had been there, then Russell Martin would have had a senior voice who knew about football, who was he'd be able to bounce ideas off of, and maybe we wouldn't have been as terrible as we were at the start of the season if there'd been a senior voice there to say, hang on, we can't really do this, and curtailed some of the more mad stuff that we did at the start of the season. So I certainly don't think it's done us any favours not having a senior figure on the football side there, and I think that's what reading between the lines, that's the conclusion that Dragan Solak has come to himself, and maybe Henrik Kraft was the one who decided not to replace Jason Wilcox. Who knows? But it certainly seems that all was not well with that particular relationship, because I see Kraft has been taken out of he was chairman of Valenciennes as well, and he's not anymore. So now he's a shareholder in Sports Republic, and with role undefined as it stands. So Dragan was clearly not very happy, and I mean, the statement he made straight after whatever game it was that we lost. No, it was straight after the Swansea game, wasn't it, that we actually won? He made the decision and said he was going to change the football side of the board, if you like, and true to his word, and that's what he's done. So you can only judge it over time, but I think definitely think it's a step in the right direction.
Just a bit more on Johannes Spors himself, man, if you like. I mean, obviously coming from that sort of 777 group, which is owns Sevilla, Genoa, Standard Liège, and a couple more teams. They're a bit of a basket case as a group, I think, in terms of they tried to buy Everton in the summer, but that's more the owner's side of it. I think the thing that I find interesting about Spors, and I find promising about him, we have to see how it works, but his background is heavily recruitment. I mean, where he come from is recruitment. He was initially a recruitment analyst, a head of recruitment, head of scouting at clubs like Leipzig and Vitesse Arnhem, and sort of before becoming a sporting director about 4 years ago. And clearly that's where it's been a struggle, isn't it? It's actual that recruitment, that setting up the we've heard about sort of how they've set up these good scouting networks, and they seem to find good players and identify good players. It's just getting them in and getting them over the line, and he's got a lot of experience in that. You mentioned his style is sort of more Ralph than Russell Martin, I suppose. Yeah, more Ralph than Russ. I mean, his direct quote, I think, when he was linked to Tottenham a couple of years ago, because he's been linked to Tottenham and Newcastle, and he said, if you compare the Premier League, it's more the Klopp direction than the Guardiola direction. So that's the higher rate version of what you've said, basically.
That's not version, mine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he's coming in as a technical director, not as a sporting director. So I think, as far as I'm aware, he will work within the current structure, sort of kind of serving alongside Mark Bitcon and reporting into the CEO Phil Parsons and the board. There's clearly just a space there for new ideas, and I think that reading between the lines, he'll be pretty heavily focused on recruitment, hopefully, and that improving that side of things. So we'll have to see how it gets on. I'm not expecting that to be announced sort of as quickly as the ground back thing, but as far as I'm aware, that it's in the process. It's basically done. Touch wood, it gets completed, and maybe it's a week or whatever it is until we see the announcement.
Let's hope he sticks around a bit longer than the last few.
Well, that's always the problem, isn't it? Because in the day, if you get someone in who's good, then they'll be off somewhere else. Then they're off somewhere else, and that is the cycle that unfortunately you can never really you can't fault the club for that, because it's nothing they can do about it. Hopefully he's good. And if that means he's gone in 2 years, then it's a nightmare.
But that's the same with any player, isn't it? And you can't not bring someone in because you think he's going to go in if he does well. I mean, that's what football's about. So get him in, do a good job, and if he goes, he goes.
Can I just ask you about Shay Charles as well, Alfie? Because I was surprised to see him play for Sheffield Wednesday. I didn't realise there was a 7-day clause in that, and it sounds like that. The Sheffield Wednesday owner might have rattled a few cages, and there was some odd things going on at that fans forum.
Yeah, very unusual circumstance. I mean, the timeline of that fans forum. So what was that, last Wednesday? So I mean, they held a fans forum within about 4 hours of that recall clause expiring. So if they got to midnight, I don't think Saints could have recalled him. He went into that forum and said that Shay Charles isn't good enough for Southampton and there's no point they recalled him. And I don't know if that had anything to do with the decision, but it's funny timing, isn't it? And then by midnight, he comes back into the room, Defran Chansiri. He comes into the room and says, "Bad news, guys, they've just recalled him." Absolutely incredible. But yeah, so there's a 7-day clause apparently, which means he can play him. He played against Leeds. It's a circumstance I haven't seen before, but he has been recalled by Southampton. By next Wednesday, he will be back at the club. And I guess it's just a case of sort of deciding what his next steps are. The club will be open to letting him go on another loan if they get a bit of cash for him, which makes sense. But also, I guess
United were hilariously interested.
Yeah, and Chris Wilder's confirmed that as well. So Chris Wilder said that he likes Shay and he wants him, which I mean that really would be that's one way to stick out Chansiri, isn't it? Like,
yeah, but the problem with this sort of thing though is people remember this, and I mean, if come the summer we decide, okay, Juric, thank you very much, you've done your best, but we're gonna move in a different direction, and we decide that Danny Roll is the guy that we want, all of a sudden this gets very awkward and very messy because I mean, everybody's seen what sort of a guy Chansiri is. He's a shoot from the hip kind of guy. He will do something really petty and really stupid just to spite people. And that if we wanted to appoint Danny Roll from Sheffield Wednesday, it would take forever because he'll just tie us up in knots with just stringing the whole thing out, being a pain in the arse, demanding more money.
But was that not why they've fallen out though? Because that was the thing that kind of, I don't know if it was covered or went under the radar for me, but did that not come up at their fans forum that we approached him and asked to speak to Danny Roll and he said no, which makes me think that he was our first choice maybe all along. That to me I thought was more interesting than the Shay Charles stuff.
I think it's also come out as
too expensive for us.
Yeah, I think it's also come out in the sort of the Sheffield Star, who are obviously big on their club. I think they've sort of said that Danny Roll wants the release fee to be reduced or something off the back of that, or maybe someone else reported that. So yeah, I mean, all is not well. Anybody who's working with Chansiri is going to have those kind of problems. We know that. But I mean, on Shay Charles, the sensible outlook on Shay Charles is that ultimately, if Chelsea get to January the 31st and decide they want to recall Leslie Ugochukwu, you've got a ready-made replacement there and ready. So I guess that probably has come into it as well. So rather than getting to the 25th and going, we can't recall Charles anymore because of this clause, we've got him. We can decide what to do. If they decide to, loan him back out again, he's not going to be short of potential suitors, is he? He's going to have plenty of clubs wanting to take him. So I think it just brings the power back into the hands of the club and gives them the definitive answer on what happens.
Final word, Glenn.
Well, you've got to cover the fact that Leslie Ugochukwu might go back. And the reason he might go back is because, hey-ho, Romeo Lavia is injured again. And they don't know at the moment how long it's going to be. Apparently, they've got another midfielder out on loan somewhere. So I can't remember his name because they got
Brazilian lad, isn't
it? Santos or something like that. And they might bring him back, or they might bring Ugochukwu back. So so we have to cover that possibility. I hope for his sake he doesn't go to Sheffield United, because that's not going to make it very pleasant living up there, is it? For for the 4 or 5 months, and it would cause problems sort of elsewhere. I'd like him to say Sheffield Wednesday. I feel sorry for the if he's not going to come to us, I hope he stays at Sheffield Wednesday despite their owner being an idiot. I had a quick exchange of messages with James from the Wednesday Till I Die podcast, and he just wrote, he's absolutely mental. There's just like nothing more that can be said about it. So it's sad in a way that people like this end up running football clubs where the community the community is such a big part of it, and it's just their own sort of like little passion project, and feel like he feels like he can do and say what he wants. But
we covered this last year, Glenn. But was it him that the fans did a protest against him, and he released a statement replying to them and said, "Well, if you don't like me, I won't invest a single penny," and then didn't invest a single penny. I'm pretty sure that was Chansiri as well.
That was him.
But yeah. I mean, that's just mental, isn't it? Like you say. I mean, yeah, incredible.
We've got all this to look forward to next year, haven't we? Right. I feel like we've got through tons tonight, so thank you for that. Hopefully, as I mentioned earlier, if that was your little weekly therapy session, I hope it's helped. You can follow the Total Saints podcast on all the social media platforms. We are at Total Saints Pod on there. Do check out the merch store as well. I was joking about the Tall Paul t-shirts, but they might be on their way. shop.totalsaints.co.uk. And as I mentioned right at the start, we're also on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. Just visit patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. Each of those tiers comes with different perks, including some weekly shouts for patrons in our Francis Benali and our Mick Shannon tier. So thanks to Dave Melton, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyatt, and James Kibbe. They're in our Francis Benali tier. And also thanks to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrup, Matt Hall, Mark Littlewood, Mike Etheridge, James Bobin, John Bevan, and Liam Dempsey, who are in our Mick Shannon tier. Thank you to Paul Castle Associates and our friends at Steamtown Brewery for sponsoring TSP this season. Thank you to Steve, Alfie, and Glenn. Thank you for watching and listening. We will see you again back in our usual place of Sunday night at 7 o'clock. Have a good week.